Hi, everyone. This is Bernie Wolfsdorf. It is a great pleasure to present today. Thank you for joining us. I am the managing partner of WR Immigration. I'm going to keep talking for a minute or two or 3 minutes, give people a chance to join us today. We had very, very good registration. This seems like an extremely popular topic. Today's presentation is going to focus on the E-2 Treaty Investor Visa. The United States has an E-2 treaty. Some of these came out of bilateral investment treaties. Some of these are old treaties of commerce and navigation going back to the 19th century. Very old treaties which provide a basis for the issuance of a work visa. We are also going to talk about the EB-5 program. That is the direct EB-5 program. I wish I was also talking about the Regional Center EB-5 program, which was incredibly popular, but is currently waiting for reauthorization. And a lot of people like the EB-5 Regional Center program. I like the EB-5 Regional Center program. I am slightly hopeful because I've actually seen a reauthorization bill, which I liked. However, this is an election year. So predicting how Congress will act in an election year can be challenging, because immigration is not necessarily the highest priority item for Congress. We're 2 minutes past the hour. I'm going to keep talking for another minute or two to give a few people a chance to join us, because people are dialing in from all over the world. Again, my name is Bernie Wolfsdorf. Welcome to our program today. This program is being presented by WR Immigration. I am in Los Angeles today. We have 8 offices throughout the United States. We are in Los Angeles, Santa Monica, San Francisco, Oakland. We actually have 2 offices in San Francisco and 1 in Oakland, so 3 in the Bay Area. Boston is a large office, New York, and of course our Shanghai back-end office. So without further ado, I think it's time to get started. We seem to have a critical mass of folks who have joined us today. I will remind you that we do have a chat function, and feel free to submit your questions. We'll try and answer them during the chat. If we have time at the end, we will do a live Q&A, but we do have a lot of material, so I would advise you to put your question in the chat column. Please keep these short, just 1 sentence, 2 sentence questions, not these lengthy, detailed things. I will remind you that this presentation is not legal advice. If you want legal advice, please reach out to WR Immigration. We have 40 attorneys. We only practice immigration law, and we would be delighted to help you in answering any of your questions if you are interested in investment visas. You should ask for my partner, Joe Barnett, jbarnett@wolfsdorf.com. Joey is joining us today. My other partner, Vivian Zhu, Z-H-U at Wolfsdorf, is the other investment guru. Actually, we have quite a few lawyers specializing in this area. Okay, so we've done the legal disclaimer. If you need legal advice, contact the lawyer. I've already given you the spiel about our firm. We are growing. We're at 160 people right now. Our firm is based on innovation and technology. You'll see that when you work with us. Really, our system rapid. But the thing I'm most proud of is our certification for diversity, equity, and inclusion, our DE&I certification, which we recently got. I am so proud of the fact that we are an extremely diverse firm. The handsome guy on the left, that is my left, is Joey Barnett. Sorry, just being silly. That's how I get through these things. There's my email address. There's Joey. Joey's the one who does all the hard work here. Super smart lawyer. By the way, this presentation is going to have two separate parts. The first part is the legal presentation by myself. After our presentation, I am extremely pleased that Patrick Findaro, from the managing partner of Visa Franchise, is going to join us. Why am I doing these two separately? Because I need to just make it very clear. I don't work for Patrick. I do like Patrick. But when it comes to selecting an investment, that is not a question for an immigration lawyer. If you have a question about immigration eligibility, that is a question for immigration. We are not investment advisors, so we do not endorse investments. Investments obviously carry risk. You need to assess the risk. You need to have experts to assess the risk. And Patrick Findaro, this guy I've worked with for a while, many years. I've known him. I've met with him. We've had clients. We've got happy clients. But that means nothing, because each and every investment needs to pursue due diligence. And I repeat that word again and again, due diligence, due diligence. Patrick will help you through that process. But I always say do due diligence on your due diligence provider. That includes me and Joey. Check us out. Make sure that we are the right people to work with. Who are we? Because working with the correct professionals is critical to success. Okay, so to start off with E-2 treaty investor visas, I'm going to fly through this relatively quickly. Again, encourage you all, if you have questions, to join us. For people who are not familiar, there's a variety of non-immigrant visas. Non-immigrant visas give you the right to live and, in many instances, work in the United States, travel in and out. So you've got a choice of different visas, but the E1 is the treaty trader. We're not talking about trading today. We are talking about the E2 treaty investor. And then there's numerous green card options. EB1, employment-based first preference, EB2, EB3, EB4, national interest waivers, family, diversity. But again, we are only talking about EB5. And here's a very important slide. I noticed in checking it last night that they had left off Montenegro, so we've updated that. I think it's 81 countries. China, Republic of China, Taiwan has the treaty. Pakistan has the treaty. India and China do not have treaties. So if you're from a country that does not have a treaty, we will talk to you later about CBI, citizenship by investment. It's an extra step, but we're doing the Turkish program right now, the Grenada program, and Montenegro program is a little bit expensive. I don't really like it. Turkish is my favorite, Grenada my second favorite. There may be others, but if you don't have the correct nationality, well, then get it. Common to be able to obtain a second passport through investment or through a gift. All right, so let's focus on the requirements for an E2. I don't like, oh, by the way, I put a lot of material in here because at the end of this presentation, we will be sending you the PowerPoint. So my idea was that you could actually use this PowerPoint as a resource. Share it with your friends. Of course, that's good marketing for me too, if you share it with your friends. But the purpose of putting all this material in here is so that you can go back and look at some of the key elements. So I've already spoken about the first point, nationality. If you don't have the correct nationality, then you have to acquire the correct nationality if you want to do an E2. So you can also just Google the term E2 countries quite easily. And I know Patrick's got that stuff on his website as well. Point number 2. This is the big one. you, the investor, have to make a substantial investment. And what does the word substantial mean? Well, we evaluate substantial in relation to the specific investment. So I always use the example, I want to build supersonic aircraft. I think the investment amount would probably be about 1 billion or something if you want to build supersonic aircraft. So if that's the particular business, but if you were going to look at an elderly care business or one of the businesses that Patrick is, and I haven't seen what he's presenting today, that will be in the second part of our presentation, but it has to be substantial in relation to that type of investment. Sometimes I will tell people, well, okay, you want to open up a small restaurant, you know, 250. Yeah, sure, no problem. Actually, the thing that I like to see in addition to the investment amount is job creation. Now, nowhere in the E-2 do they really talk about job creation, but if you jump below to the fourth point, you will see I've highlighted the word significant economic contribution. So, I mean, if you're going to create one part-time job in your business plan, how does that contribute to significant economic contribution? Well, maybe your revenue, maybe your sales, but that phrase is absolutely critical. Now, there are different roles that you can play, and we're going to talk about that as well. I'm going to push Patrick on that because actually that is a requirement. So the principal investor will direct and develop. Direct and develop, what does that mean? Or you could be a manager or employee with special skills. So one of the other nice things about an E-2 is, let's assume you come from Argentina and you do an investment and your best friend happens to be a CPA. You can potentially bring your best friend with you. And by the way, Joey, you're going to have to confirm this for me as well. I just saw yesterday that spouses now of L's and E's are getting automatic work authorization upon entry, and it's being notated. Did you see that email that was sent out in the office from LAX where they're coding it as an L2S, which is a work authorized category? This is huge. Not only do you get the work visa, but the spouse gets the work visa, and it's automatic. Bingo, we just got 2 for 1, and they can both. But here's the nice part about this, and I absolutely love this. But be careful with it, because the spouse has unrestricted employment authorization. Unrestricted. So, you know, if your spouse has always wanted to flip burgers at McDonald's, their lifelong dream job, bingo, you get the E-2. The spouse gets to go and work at McDonald's and flip burgers. I would probably choose In-N-Out Burger if I was in California, but those I prefer. But silliness aside, that's a very important consideration, that spouses can in fact obtain automatic work authorization.
Bernie, to add in, it's a good time to be an employee. So, you know, if your spouse is able to get a job and make 5K, 6K, 10K a month while the business scales up, you know, that's money for the family.
I don't know about you, Patrick, but you know what happened? I brought my wife into the company 8 years ago. Now she's the boss, all right? So, you know, there's also a danger I could get fired soon. I'm always wondering whether my wife...
better to keep it separate.
In some ways, it could be, because warning, about bringing your spouse into the business, better to like have her go and work somewhere else. But no, in our case, quite frankly, I'm joking, but I'm not. My wife is the reason for the success of our company right now. She's a smart technology person.
One thing to add here, Bernie, and just to answer one of the questions that was raised is related to the nationality of the spouse. Does the nationality of the spouse need to have the same?
Great question, and I love that. No, no, no. We don't care which passport your spouse or children have. They become automatically eligible. So we often have that situation where one spouse has the correct treaty country and the other doesn't. But you have to be a little bit careful. If your spouse has never worked and has been a homemaker all of his life, if your husband has been a homemaker and looks after the kids and has never worked, and you then putting your husband up as the principal applicant, there is this question of whether the individual is qualified. So be careful. There is this requirement. They do expect you to be able to play an active role, and we're going to go into that in more depth. But I want to go back to three more words on this PowerPoint: real and operating. Real and operating. What is an E-2? Now, one of the things I don't like about E-2s is every consul's different. Every post is different. The consuls in Japan, for example, are really good on E's. The consuls in some other places are not as good. All right. So you go in, you apply for the E-2. I had this once in a European post. They had invested, quite frankly, about $2 million in a restaurant, hired all the staff, went in for the E, and the consul said, no, I'll give you a B1 visa. I'm not ready to give you an E-2 because the business has not opened. If it's a restaurant, I want to see a menu and you are ready to open. And I'm like, come on. Anyway, that was the consul. He was mean to me. Scratch that. He was mean to the client. But he is focusing on the word real and operating. How can it be operating if you haven't opened the business? Well, how do you open the business if you don't have the work visa? But there are the B1 business visitor and a visa waiver version of it. So they expect you to come in on the B1, which is not easy. So the purpose again is to enhance economic interaction, make a significant impact. This is not a retirement visa. Need to be clear. This is not a retirement visa. So moving on, advantages of the E-2, and there are many advantages to the E-2. Most countries, there's a word you have to learn on the E called visa reciprocity. The reason I don't like the Montenegro E is, and I haven't checked it, well, when I last checked it, I think it's like a 1-year E-2 treaty. And Turkey, Grenada, Italy, France, all the other countries, 5 years, generally speaking. So you can get a 5-year visa, but be careful, it's kind of confusing. You get a 5-year visa. Visa allows you to present yourself at the airport. When you enter the country, you automatically get admitted for 2 years, provided your passport's valid for the relevant period. 2-year admission. So every 2 years, you can either pay me money to file an extension or do it yourself, but they're tricky. Or you can travel. So I tell my clients, go home for Christmas. Go home for the holidays. And when you come back, you get a 2-year extension. The problem we have is sometimes one spouse travels and the other doesn't, and you cannot let your status expire. So there's E-2 visa, which is the stamp in the passport, and E-2 status, which is something you get at the airport. Now,
Montenegro is 12 months.
Montenegro is 12 months. That's what I thought. The bottom line is, I don't like it as a CBI, citizenship by investment, because if you don't have the right passport, you get a Montenegrin passport, you only get a 1-year visa, and every year you have to renew it. This is the problem we have with the Mexican E. That also used to be 5 years, and they reduced the reciprocity schedule down to 1 year. But the good news with the Mexican E's and most countries is you can get them renewed with a mail-in. You don't actually have to like go for a personal
Thankfully, Bernie, they recently revised in Mexico back to 4 years.
Yay!
It's great. Like Chile went down to 1 year, so it's a moving target.
Thank you for correcting. As I was saying it, I'm like, have I not read they just changed that recently?
I mean, you have to check on the State Department before.
I know, but I goofed it. The bottom line
I'm saying whoever's looking to apply for the E-2, it's like that day you need to be looking and before you.
And the other thing they did with like the Australian one is they added a ridiculous fee of like a couple $1,000s. I mean,
usually
wow.
What? It's $200-300.
Oh, generally speaking, it's only the visa fee, but there are also reciprocal fees. So the Aussies charge Americans The Australians charge the Americans, so it's a reciprocal. But I am actually really happy to hear that Mexico has moved back to 4, because that was a really big headache for us. But and I think, Joe, you mentioned this. The bottom line is you have to check that every time, because it does change. It doesn't change that often, but it does change. So the other good news is that children can study in public or private schools. Now, here's something a lot of people do not know. When you're on an E-2, you can acquire in-state tuition. So how much does it cost to go to UCLA if you're an international student? I don't really know, but it's probably over 50,000. And what if you qualify for in-state tuition? We're looking at 25 or something. Again, my numbers are not up to date. But the bottom line is you can literally, if you've got a couple kids, save hundreds of thousands of dollars. You've got 3 or 4 kids because you're on an E-2 rather than sending them on an F1. Because on an F1, they can never, student visa, they can never become residents. Whereas if the parents are on E2s and have been here and live here, then the children can qualify for in-state tuition at a lot of the state schools. So there you are. You just got all your money back. The E2 can be extended very often indefinitely. In some instances, you're not going to avoid worldwide taxation, because once you've been here for more than 6 months on an E, you are potentially subject to worldwide taxation. I do not give tax advice, but I do have to mention this point. But if you are an E2 and you're able to keep below the 183-day threshold, which is a 3-year look back, you have to look at the last 3 years, 180 days. So it's number of days in the current year plus 1/3 of the days prior to that, plus 1/6 of the days in the year prior to that with a 3-year look back. If you're under 180, so you can't really spend more than 100 days in the US, but you don't have to be here full time. And I find that with a lot of investors and high net worth people, they may have a house in the Bahamas. They may have a house in the south of France. And they may have, a house somewhere else and spend a couple months a year in each place running their businesses.
Bernie, we could easily have like a webinar with a tax professional, but just give 2 recent items. We've seen that sometimes one of the spouses does the EB-5 visa, the other one does the E-2 and comes and goes. And then for folks with over 20 mil net worth, a lot of times they'll live in the US, but they structure with their tax professional where they're not going to pay a big estate tax on that 20 mil that's out of the US. So it's probably warrants a good webinar, because there's a lot of benefits on the fiscal side of the E-2 visa.
Patrick, I work with a couple of great tax lawyers, and maybe that's a good idea. Yeah. You've got to do some tax planning. The American, you don't mess with the IRS. Okay, it's my favorite line. A lot of foreign nationals, they don't quite understand because the tax framework is less rigid. But don't mess with the IRS in the US. Do your tax planning. You don't want to get any surprises, and that type of thing where one spouse may be resident, the other may not. One spouse may have all the assets, the other may not. That's what happened to me. I got married, now I'm poor. Stop that, Bernie. Anyway, this is a visa that you apply directly at the US consulate. That is the best way to do it. There is a way to do it in the US. I discourage that, because if you do it in the US, as soon as you travel outside the United States, you have to get it stamped. And that stamping is not a routine procedure. So why not start off by having it stamped in the beginning? Some posts will take about 2 or 3 months. We had terrible COVID backlogs. Some posts are still COVID backlogged, but we are seeing improvement in terms of processing time. So this is repetitious, can be a franchise. You can open a new business or purchase an existing business. Now, opening a new business obviously works nicely. Purchasing a business works. Purchasing a business almost always does not work for direct EB-5. So now we're talking about E2. We're also going to talk about converting an E2 to an EB-5. But when you purchase an existing business, it's hugely complicated because they want you to create a new commercial enterprise, and yet they won't tell you what it is. They don't tell you what a new commercial enterprise is when you purchase an existing business in the scope, in the framework of an E2. So it gets very confusing and difficult. Sometimes that's why I do like a franchise, because it's clean. You can show the new business, you can show the job creation, you can show the economic impact, you can show the new US employees who weren't there before.
We'll talk on the buying the business side later in the presentation, but it takes a long time to find that business and do like a proper due diligence because the data is not readily available. And you made the point on the IRS, buying a business under $1 million, they're generally not running it super compliant in a compliant way. There should be employees that are being paid as contractors. There should be actual employees and they're being marked as a 1099 contractor. And even worse, people are getting cash, which is very commonplace in South Florida and Miami, which we have the good and bad of Latin America, and a lot of small businesses pay cash. And you don't necessarily want to be starting your American dream with a business that is operating in the black.
That's helpful, Patrick. Again, sorry, Patrick is the managing partner of Visa Franchise. When people talk to me about, oh, well, I'm interested in buying a business, can you make any recommendations? I say to them, look, I'm sure there are good business brokers somewhere, but what I understand is it's very hard to find a good business broker who actually will do the correct due diligence for you. So I think Patrick's warning is good. I just use the general warning, be careful, be careful, be careful, do due diligence. You're buying a business, you don't know what you're buying, and you will be inheriting generally, even with indemnifications, certain liabilities, possibly tax liabilities. So filing procedures, applications filed at the post. We talk a little bit here about third country processing. Sometimes you can apply in a third country. This is discretionary. At the moment, third country processing is not greatly favored, but this is a very important thing. We're not going to go in the weeds on this. If you're doing business in the third country, you're more likely to be accepted. But the general rule is they want you to apply in your home country. So that can be a challenge if your home country is terribly backlogged in scheduling appointments. So sometimes we will go with TCN processing. We consider ourselves pretty good. Schedule appointments, submit your application. Some of the big posts, the Big 10, they work differently with ease. They want you to register the company first. So London, Japan, et cetera, the primary posts, they have a two-step procedure. First, you register the company, and then you apply for the individual. So what sort of services do we meaning WR, provide? We can help you getting that CBI, the Citizenship by Investment Passport. Again, our two favorite countries, Grenada and Turkey. We will help you prepare the E-2 visa application. We will discuss with you choice of consulate, prepare you for the consulate interview, make sure you have all the documents, and we will introduce you to a business plan writer, make sure that I actually work with the, you do need if you choose a franchise lawyer, I work with Patrick's referral on that because that person is pretty good. So again, I spoke earlier about E-2 status versus E-2 visas. This is why I encourage you to get the E-2 visa first, because if you only get status when you travel, you lose that status and need to get the visa. So I encourage people to get the visa, and then you're going to get a 2-year period of admission. This is all a little bit out of date. Literally yesterday, the E-2 spouse automatically, it's incident to status, automatically gets work authorization. This is a huge one. Because
it depends on the entry, right? Because it's different depending on your port of entry at this point, right?
At this point, correct.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think within a few weeks, we'll probably see it nationwide. I think they're rolling it out. I'm not sure if it's a pilot at this point, to be honest. I didn't actually study it. I just saw that one of our clients got one, an L2S, which was kind of exciting. Please be aware, minor children can attend school. They cannot work. So the work authorization does not include the children, which is sad, but it's the way it's going to work. And there's no even discretionary basis for children to get work authorization. So that's kind of an issue on ease, because if the kid's going to turn 21, you've got to start focusing on the green card. The E-2 alone is fine, potentially for the adults, but for the children, when they turn 21, what happens then? Send them back home. Yeah, sure, just kick the kids out. That doesn't work too well. So, you know, you've got to start thinking about a green card if they are getting into 16, 17, they're going to want to work in summer jobs, etc. Is my computer freezing? Why is this not moving?
We can hear and see you well.
Yeah, I know, but for some reason my thing isn't. I think it's just sleeping. Maybe my computer's having a little nap in the middle of the day. Oh, I was going to talk about filing procedures. I don't know where are we going. Yay, the computer decided to wake up. I swear to you, that wasn't me. That was the computer having a nap. Okay, so I mentioned this as well. You file with US, you get a 2-year approval. The one that we're recommending, and that 2 to 3 months should be in parentheses because it really varies by post. The procedure we prefer: file with the consulate or embassy, attend a visa interview, and then you can enter the US and you'll get your 2-year stay. Look, there's something that I kind of wanted to talk about because it's important. The EB-5 processing time is terrible. Now, generally speaking, almost any application can be expedited, but you have to have compelling reasons. We like healthcare, we like humanitarian. Financial loss, it's there, but it's not that effective. So the big news here with the E-2, employment authorization is immediate, for the L, immediate, for the spouses, immediate. With the regional center program, and I'm not going to really talk about it because we're waiting for reauthorization, you can anticipate that it will take at least 6 months after you file the adjustment, which is the second stage, assuming you're in the US. So obtaining work authorization through the EB-5 program is actually slow. Expedites can be requested, but they're not automatic. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. And now let's go over to the topic of direct EB-5. The EB-5 program was created in 1990. I filed my first direct EB-5 case in 1993. I got it approved in 24 hours. Oh boy, when Coca-Cola cost a nickel, wasn't it wonderful? But not too relevant to today because there's no more 24 hours. In fact, you could be lucky if it's 24 months to get your EB-5 approved. 24 months, maybe 36 months, 2 to 3 years. Now, there may be expedites, but the problem with the direct EB-5 is how are you supposed to run this business if you don't have a visa, if it's taken 2 to 3 years to process? So you need to have the E-2 generally. Well, what if you don't have the right country? I've mentioned, then you acquire that passport. So Joe, look, this is what you do for a living all day. Rather than me talk, I'm sure people are tired of my phony English accent. Discuss this EB-5 process. How does this thing work? Give me a little run through of what happens. I call Joe Barnett and I say, Joey, I need an EB-5. What happens?
Yep. So EB-5 is, like Bernie mentioned, a long-term solution. At many times needs to be put in parallel with a short-term non-immigrant visa solution, which is why we're talking about the E-2s as well. EB-5, there's 2 aspects to the initial application where you file. It's called the I-526. You need to demonstrate that the money that you're investing into the United States and into this company was lawfully obtained capital. You need to demonstrate that it's put at risk into a US company that has the ability to create jobs for US workers. You make the investment, you show the money's at risk, then you file the application. The processing times during that application, like Bernie mentioned, it kind of varies. Once that application is approved, if you're outside the United States, you apply for an immigrant visa abroad, or if you're in the United States on an E-2 or another non-immigrant visa, you apply to adjust status. Once you get that immigrant visa put into your passport, if you're abroad, you enter the United States, they stamp your passport, welcome to the United States. A week or two later, you get a conditional green card that says you entered on day X, and your conditional green card expires on day X plus 2 years. During that 2-year period, you can live wherever you want, work wherever you want, or drink margaritas on the beach if you really want to. Of course, if you're doing direct EB-5, you need to be engaged in the management of the company. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. You have that 2-year period in the United States. At the end of the 2-year period, you file the I-829 to remove the conditions. What are the conditions? Well, one, that you haven't gotten any of your investment funds back yet. You've sustained it at risk. And two, that the jobs have been created. And for direct EB-5, you need to demonstrate that those are W-2 employees, full-time employees within the new commercial enterprise that you invested in, or within that new commercial enterprise's wholly owned subsidiary. And so, like we have, I think Bernie mentioned this beginning, EB-5 is a job creation program with an immigration benefit. If you don't create the jobs, you don't get the full benefit. It's investment is not enough.
So,
yeah.
Joey, let me jump in here and ask you the question. I want to talk about investment amounts. I filed cases in September 2019, and I believe at that point we were filing at 900,000, correct?
That was as of November of 2019.
November 2019. Thanks for correcting me.
Yeah.
So November 2019, we were filing EB-5, and it was 900,000 minimum investment, and then 1.8 million. So now my slide says it's 500,000 if you're in a TEA and 1 million outside of a TEA. What happens? How come nothing ever goes down? The prices always go up. How come we went from 900,000 to 500,000? Can you explain that to me, Joey? I don't get it.
The price increase occurred in November of 2019 based on a regulation that was promulgated and finalized by the Trump administration. And then there was a lawsuit that was filed. And last June, a district court struck down that regulation, which had increased the investment amount, because the person who was in charge of DHS at that time was not properly appointed and confirmed as required by the Federal Vacancies Act. And so it has been struck down and vacated as if it were never put into place. And now that minimum investment is back to 500K if it's in a targeted employment area.
So Joe, you have, you're able to predict the future. I know you're able to give me the, tell me who's going to win the Super Bowl. I've heard that you've been talking about the Rams winning the Super Bowl. Most of us in LA are expecting that, but not everybody. Question. If I file an EB-5 after we get reauthorization, assuming we get reauthorization, what is your prediction as to what the investment amount is going to be? Today we know it's 500,000 and 1 million. Using your ability to read tea leaves and tell the future, what do you predict the investment amount will be, assuming we get reauthorization?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think we're going to see some level of increase in the price, maybe up to 750K or 850K. I think what we can anticipate is that when Congress reauthorizes the Regional Center program, part of the reforms that they include will have investment amount increases.
So,
So
look, I'm being silly because that's my MO, my way of presenting things. But I don't say I'm a betting man, but I've seen a draft of the bill, and the bottom line is the price is going up. It's going to go back up. They regard this 500,000 as too cheap. So for those of you who are sitting on the fence and you're happy with direct, if you wait for reauthorization, which, to be honest, I am recommending to some people, depending on their preference, that they wait. If you do wait, warning, warning, warning. I predict that the minimum investment will go to 700,000 and 850. 700 and 850. So be ready to pay a premium if you listen to Bernie Wolfsdorf and wait for the regional center program. The direct program is real and operating, but I still prefer the regional center program, and I'll be direct. The reason why is that with regional center, you only have to prove indirect jobs, and that's a big deal. Having 10 full-time employees is expensive, but the good news is right now we've got a deal at 500,000. This is likely to go up. The price is definitely going to go up. The price was substantially higher just a year or two ago. And now we're back to the original number, which was set in 1990. This is a 30-year-old number, discounted for inflation. This is really
a deal.
It's a good deal.
Not a bad price for freedom.
It's not a bad price. Well, you use the word freedom. I use the word American dream. I've lived the American dream. I'm an immigrant. And honestly, we've got problems in America for sure. But which country doesn't? And anyway, I'll cut my patriotic stuff, but I still think
yeah, the fact of the matter is that the investment amount now that is available for direct EB-5 will likely not last and be there when the regional center program gets reauthorized.
So Joe, let me trick you and go one step further. If I put in 500,000 now, is there a chance that they may require me after I file to put in additional money?
It's a great question and one we get often, and I would argue no. You're eligible at the time of filing, and what the law and the regulations require today is a minimum investment of 500K if you're in a TEA.
That's a very important, it's called the cutting back, K-A-T-I-G-B-A-K, cutting back. They always quote that case against us that you must have meet all the requirements at time of filing. We don't care that you met them 3 days later. We don't care. At the time you submit the application, you have to meet the requirements. So I'm with you, Joe. I think if 500, we go in at 500, we're pretty safe. And the only argument I have now to push direct, only argument, is the price. The price is good. The price is right. But interestingly, I have found clients are concerned about having to put another $500,000, or I think if Congress acts, it's going to be somewhere in the middle. I think the old 900 was too high, and we didn't have many customers. And folks, when Patrick starts talking, I'm going to try to answer some of the questions. But in the meantime, we got to get through this. Joe, run through the basic requirements for us again, please.
Yeah, you invest lawfully obtained capital into a U.S. company that's going to create jobs for full-time employees. You show that with a business plan that is created, documenting the types of jobs, when they're going to be created. The business plan, there are certain requirements that must be met to show that it's credible.
But Joe, don't say effectively sitting at 2 or 3 years, you file your case and you get an RFE and they say, show me the jobs have been created. And you're like, well, look at my business plan. It's a reasonable business plan, but they actually want to see jobs.
That's true. What we have been seeing is a lot of requests for evidence saying, okay, you have this business plan. Nothing has, it's been 18, 24 months since you've submitted it. Show me that you're executing the business plan. And if you're not able to show steps towards executing that business plan, they'll say, okay, well, then it's not credible. So we have been working with our clients to make sure that they have some job creation by the time that their I-526 is adjudicated. We can draft a business plan to give a little bit of wiggle room, but really what the government wants to see are that jobs have been created before they even approve the I-526 whether or not that's what's the law or regulations require. That's what they
Joe,
want to see.
I used to drink coffee, but now I switched to tea. TEA. Sorry, that was a bad pun. Can you, in 20 seconds, switch to TEA? What is this TEA thing? And don't tell me what it's going to be under new rules. I'm not interested in economic zones and all that stuff. What is it today? How do we, because it's the correct investment amount is not 500, it's $1 million. Let's get this clear. The correct investment amount is $1 million. It is reduced to 500,000 if, finish my sentence.
If the company that you're investing in is creating jobs within a targeted employment area.
Got it.
And what is a targeted employment area? It's a rural area or an area that has high unemployment, 150% of the national average.
And you're going to tell me where these things are, Joe?
They're based on census tract. And so it really, we would work with an economist based on the location of the business where you want to be located and confirm whether or not that will qualify for the lower investment amount. And what you end up getting is a letter from a state or a local municipality, if you're in Texas or some of these other states, and they will confirm that it is a area of high unemployment. That is good evidence that you can submit to USCIS that they're supposed to defer to.
The bottom line, they want to see a current TEA letter as of the time of filing. After filing, we don't really care what happens, but as of the time of filing, you have to be in a TEA, and that's your job to help us get that and to determine. So don't buy your business until you have retained
Bernie,
Joey.
an important note, like Joey alluded to, Texas municipality letter definitely takes a lot longer with judges, from what I understand, having to prove it. Florida has been a breeze. Like we get the letter in like 24 hours.
Yeah, it's absolutely based on the state. Some states are a lot easier to work with than others. Florida is a great one. California is starting to get a little bit more easy as well. So it's definitely a state by state thing. Now, of course, you can also do your own analysis and submit your own analysis to USCIS. It's just that sort of under their policy, they're supposed to defer to a state determination. So it's better evidence to submit.
So, look, Joe, you've mentioned the word at risk. The bottom line is every business person needs to understand what's at risk. But if there's a guaranteed investment, you're out. So whenever people say, look, I need a guarantee, I'm going to get my money back, you cannot do that. So, Joe, talk a little bit about equity, because the bottom line is that with direct, it's going to be an equity structure. With the regional center, you've potentially got a loan structure. What's the difference, and what is the difference from a risk perspective, sir?
Sure. So the way that it works is you're required to make an equity investment into a new commercial enterprise. In direct EB-5, the jobs must be within that new commercial enterprise or within a wholly owned subsidiary, meaning equity only. In a regional center context, USCIS has allowed the use of a loan model where you make an equity investment into your new commercial enterprise that pools the money with other EB-5 investors, and then you provide a loan to a developer who uses that money to build the building and create the jobs.
So the bottom line is that if it's a loan, the loan will mature after 5 or 6 years, maybe with 1 or 2 extensions, but the debt instrument equity does not mature, and you've got to focus more on an exit strategy. We've kind of gone into that. We've spoken a little bit about lawful source of funds. I'm going to start flying through some of this stuff. Go back and read the PowerPoint because I want to leave some time for Patrick, and I don't like going too long. Creation of the job. Joe, so if I just hire 10, this is tricky. So we do recommend E-Verify to prove job creation, legal, lawful employees, but please be aware you can only count citizens, no family members, LPRs, permanent residents, asylees, and refugees. You cannot count DACA kids and TPS. Even though they're lawfully authorized to work, this L2 spouse or E2 spouse cannot be counted amongst the 10. So we need to see 10 US citizens. I like to monitor this very carefully, and no independent contractors. You've spoken already about the importance of business plans. If you're going to do EB-5, you need to be familiar with this. What's in a business plan, everything. characteristics of direct investment. Joe, why does it have to be 100% parent? Why can't you just do a 99% subsidiary and put the jobs in there?
Because the regulation says wholly owned subsidiary, and that means 100%. So you got to
Got
follow
it.
what the reg says.
So
I will
don't you
say
go.
though, just to kind of just, we just went through the I-9 thing real quick. It's really important that you have these I-9 compliance, because this is one of the documents that they look at when you're proving job creation. And you know, it's not enough just to have an I-9, though. It's necessary, but not sufficient.
So the I-9 is the form you complete on day one of hiring a foreign national and verify within 3 days of hire. But Joe, some people don't like to submit I-9s. They prefer other records, and they will only submit an I-9 upon request because it raises the question where these people authorize. And every single I-9 I see has mistakes on it, which means they can be fined for those mistakes. So get your I-9s in order, Joe. We need to do an I-9 webinar because it's so important, particularly for corporate employers. But thank you for reminding us.
The thing that I just wanted to mention is that you have to demonstrate that these positions are 35 hours a week. That is the key. Yeah, exactly. Full-time positions. So it's also having payroll records and things like that. Your W-2s, they're going to be looking at how much money an individual makes in a year. And if you're working 35 hours a week for a certain period of time and you're not paying the minimum wage, for example, then that's another issue that USCIS will bring it.
Yeah, because it's not lawful. It makes total sense.
Yep.
Job creation, again, significant detail outlined in the business plan. We went through this 100% characteristics of direct, and that was the point you just made, Joe, how important it is at the removal. There is nothing worse than an 829 denial. If your 526 gets denied, well, fine, you didn't get into the US and you didn't get your green card. But if you're already here, you've got your green card, your 829, you do have a right to present your case again in front of an immigration judge, but 829 denial is horrible. So you need to focus on what Joe's saying with regard to the I-9 forms. Some of the advantages of EB-5, geographic diversity, pool direct. Joe, let me throw that one at you, Patrick. What's your view on pool direct investment?
I think it's a great fit for the right type of investor. If you don't want to really be on top of your investment and you want to give the responsibilities to another party to like be following up with the investment and kind of giving up a lot of your control, can be a great option. If you're looking to have more control in the business and you want to have a say on what's going on day to day in the business, then it's probably not a good fit, as you might not have those responsibilities. Also, if you want to combine the E-2 and EB-5, I don't know of a pooled direct option that's possible for that combination.
Joe, what's your preference?
For what?
Pool direct investment. Do you like pool direct investment? Do you like self-directed investment? What's your preference?
I think historically more folks have done the direct EB-5 on their own. Pooled direct has sort of grown significantly since the regional center lapse. I think it is still viable. The key here is showing that you're still engaged in the management of the new commercial enterprise as was required by USCIS, either through policy formulation or some sort of managerial responsibility. And so that is incredibly important for direct pooled, is making sure that the operating agreement and other corporate structures are in place to show that you can meet that for USCIS compliance.
Thank you. Troubled business. Look, I'm not going to get into troubled business. I mean, you want to purchase troubled business, you have to show that there's been a 20% loss in the 12 or 24 months period immediately preceding filing. That's one of the exceptions in job creation, but it's a very tricky. Buying a bad business or a business that has had losses is terribly dangerous. There's also a new variation, which is the hybrid. We've spoken about management quite considerably. Joe, you've got to talk about exit strategies.
Well, this is how are you going to get your money back at the end of the process, right? Your money must be at risk throughout EB-5, throughout your sustainment period, which is 2 years of conditional green card status. But the question is this is not a donation. You worked hard to earn your money, and it's an investment, and there should be a return of your investment. So you have to look into the business plan and say, hey, how are you going to be paying me back? And what's nice about the regional center loan model is that there is usually a term in which you can get your money repaid. And potentially it is a secured loan. And so if something were to happen, there'd be collateral that you can foreclose on. That is not available with direct EB-5. And it comes down to the success of the business and making sure that, go ahead.
That's why I kind of still prefer regional center, but we don't have regional center. We haven't had since the program expired in June, and it's been a long dry spell. So that's why we are focusing again on direct. Patrick, can you talk briefly about exit strategies? And I know you'll go into it a little bit more in some of your projects, but what are the two basic ways that people can exit, recognizing that these are equity investments and exit?
I don't like when it's a preferred return or anything guaranteed, because we've been doing this now 7 years. We'd worked with some franchisors that did offer that, but when there's an issue, it's usually not honored. So I think it's disingenuous, and I really don't like when there's a guaranteed or preferred return. It should be, if the business does well, you do well, you get nice dividends. If the business doesn't do well, you're going to have to inject more capital or close the business.
I really like that answer, and thanks for being direct with our audience, because people have to understand the word guarantee doesn't really fit, in my opinion, in this arena.
Who's guaranteeing it? Like, are they giving a personal guarantee and the guy's worth 10 mil? Or is it like a corporate guarantee and the balance sheet has 200K, but he's given the guarantee to like 10 people?
So just be very careful and recognize that realistically there's risk, and you need to do your due diligence, because it's not that easy out there.
And to better answer your question though, exit strategy, if it's a business that has recurring revenue, generally you can sell that at a multiple of sales. So if it's a property management business and you're doing 300K every year and the clients are sticky, right now is a hot market. You could probably sell that business for 450K.
And that is, of
trade
course,
at some multiple, and you can sell it to the franchisor, another franchisee, another immigrant investor, an American investor. There's a fluid market, especially when it's a recurring revenue business. If it's like a restaurant, they're not trading as high a multiple, but you should be able to find a buyer if the business is making money.
And that would provide a potential exit strategy for investors. But we need to make sure that the buyer is also going to cooperate with us in processing the visa, meaning providing all the necessary documents. This new buyer needs to know that there may be continuing obligations. But even though we're running out of time, I'm sticking on exit strategies for a little while, because I want the audience to understand how critical this is to success, because your happy client, if you're a lawyer, is going to be unhappy when they find that.
And it's like, if you needed to unwind, like if you traded a stock and you bought a stock and you wanted to sell it tomorrow, what would be the loss? Like a home, it's going to be 10% hit, probably a stock less than a 1%. If you buy a business and want to sell it tomorrow, what's the hit? Is it 20%, 30%? If you want to sell the business in 3 years, how much capital should you be getting back? It's all pretty easy to get. There's a lot of data now, and you should be able to get those answers pretty quickly.
And the other thing I want to say
here is that
analysis
up front is the key point.
Yeah. So, and in a pool direct, you may have a limited ability to force a sale, right? So it's that exit strategy may be out of.
Let's be real. You don't have ability to force a sale.
Yeah. So
exactly. The managers are going to keep that. They're not going to give that to you. So, Joe, we spoke a little bit about proving a new commercial enterprise if it's an existing business with the 40% expansion rules. We spoke about TEAs. You've spoken about, a lot of this is repetitious. Joe, I want you to address the last point, though. No material change to the JCE allowed. What is that, Greek? The bottom line is that until the person has a green card or landed, you cannot have material change. So if you wanted to change the nature of the business from a hamburger stand to an elderly care business, can you do that?
Not before the CPR status is obtained for
conditional permanent resident status.
Exactly.
Right. No abbreviations.
Exactly.
Right.
There can be immaterial changes to the JCE. Maybe your business plan
Sure.
said you're going to be opening in December and now you're opening in June the next year. I don't think that's material. But certainly there are some things that are just not allowed, and that USCIS would say, oh no, you're required to refile.
Yeah. So I think that's important. You can't just flip. I mean, in business, people do, but unfortunately, they don't want any material changes. So we've gone through most of this. I do need to briefly talk about a change of E2 to EB5. So the E2 requirements are different. If you're going to try and get the lower amount, you need to make sure that you're in a TEA at the time you made your investment. So here's the critical point. If you are going to try and convert your E2 to an EB5, you need to think EB5 at the time you do your E2. You need to start your EB5 planning at the same time. So great, you go out and retain Joey to do an E2, you go out and retain Patrick to find you a franchise, but that business has to be in the correct location if you want to go in the lower investment amount. That is so important. It has to be structured correctly. The source of funds to do an E2, you don't really have to go too deep on a source of funds. For an EB5, you do have to do a forensic report on source of funds and path of funds. So much more detailed focus on the EB5. So if you're going to design the house to live in when you're old, you've got to take into consideration, don't put in any stairs now, because it's going to be hard to go up and down if you're going to live in that house when you get old. So when you're doing the E2, even though going up and down stairs may not be an issue, think about it from an EB5 point of view. So we can probably keep going. I've covered most of these points. And I just want to, we've kind of used up our time, and I want to give Patrick an opportunity to show his stuff. So I'm going to stop my share. Patrick, you're going to start sharing, and we will be sending out this PowerPoint. We've covered all the key points. So can you share your screen? There we go, Visa franchise website. Take it away, Patrick.
You're muted.
Thanks. So my brother and I, Jack, started Visa franchise back in 2015. And we started it because we both had experience in finance and franchising, and we discovered the E-2 Visa program. And we saw that franchising was a good bridge and good first step for especially new entrepreneurs setting up businesses in the United States, or if they didn't have much experience already in the United States, kind of like a soft landing in the United States. So we've had some pretty good success. We've had 450 plus clients from all over the world. We like franchising, but it's not the best fit for everyone. If you already have great experience in the US, you have a startup idea, you have the relationships, go for it. Do that startup. If you are already living here in the US on another visa category, you have 1 to 2 years to explore existing businesses to purchase, can be a great option. It just takes some time. Franchising is good because we have the data. It's a federally regulated industry where every franchise has to register the franchise disclosure document. Also, some states have even further restrictions, like in California, and they have to disclose any litigation, prior bankruptcies, and the principals on the company, unit openings, unit closures. So we mine a lot of that data, so it makes it a lot easier. And Bernie mentioned the franchise attorney that we work together with. You definitely still need a franchise attorney, corporate attorney to review those documents. We're looking at more of a business risk standpoint to see if that business is going to be around and if it has a potential for you to thrive in the business. 2.5 years ago, we saw we were sitting on a ton of data, and we're like, let's share this with the world. So we created Vetted Biz, which has 2,000 plus franchises opportunities, 3,900 businesses for sale. And we do videos, podcasts, long form article reviews on a lot of the franchises. So with that, we've compiled different lists, top E-2 visa franchises, top 50 franchises that are not eligible for the E-2 visa. So just to be super direct, McDonald's is not waiting for you. Dunkin' Donuts is not waiting for you. There's a lot of people with capital in the US. You can get a small business administration loan at 5%. Capital's not the issue in the United States right now. It's operators. So these brands, they really want an American that already has restaurant experience and has been doing it for 5, 10 years already. So you can kind of forget these brands. UPS store, every week someone's asking, I want to invest in a UPS store. You can't do it. These brands do not accept E-2 visa investors. And you might recognize a lot of these big brands. That doesn't mean there aren't good franchises that with the right investor, you have a great chance to succeed and get the E-2 visa. However, they're not necessarily going to be the huge brands, and a lot of the brands, just like Domino's or Chick-fil-A, they're largely recruiting internally, where you already were a manager of the brand, or Dutch Bros, which is expanding, recently IPO'd. They only recruit internally. So you already have to be working at the business to open up a franchise. We list every publicly available franchise here. We're happy to review any on behalf of our clients at Visa Franchise, whether they're seeking the E-2 visa or the EB-5 visa. And we go through 50 plus metrics, and first page, every franchise has a review. How many are opening? How many are closing? So Subway closed 7,000 locations in the last 5 years. So forget about E-2 visa eligibility. This is just not a good business to be joining. Why would you want to be joining a business that opens 300 plus locations while they're closing nearly 2,000 locations? There's other franchisors that have a lot of corporate locations and aren't really focused much on the franchisee, like Panda Express. They have less than 5% of their locations are franchised. Do you want to be operating in a business that the company is more focused on their locations? These are all factors to consider. That being said, I mean, you can sort through, there's a lot of businesses that are under 100K, like 600 franchises under 100,000. You're going to have to work with Joey and Bernie to see if like a business for 80K is going to be eligible for the E-2 visa. It's probably going to depend on the industry, but most of the time our clients are investing like 150K in a franchise, but we've had approvals at less. Well, there's a lot of options. So you can just reach out directly to these franchisors. However, if you want us to save you time and get the information faster and also arrange the calls with the franchisees, you can engage us and we'll help you every step of the way. A couple of businesses, especially in the healthcare sector, to consider for the E-2 and EB-5. One would be SarahCare, where they have a program where if you're not able to be here physically, and you maybe have other business interests, they can manage the day-to-day affairs of the business. And then you would be approving major expenses, driving strategy of the business, meeting monthly with the franchisor. So you're involved in the business, but there's a lot of functions that the franchisor through the management entities handling, and you're more of an executive capacity where you're not selling solutions. You're not trying to get more clients day to day, but you're making sure that the business goes well. There's no unnecessary expenses, and you're actively reviewing the financials and strategy of the business to make sure that the business is going to be there for 5+ years, and then working with Bernie and Joey to make sure you're doing what's necessary to meet the USCIS eligibility for whatever visa category you're looking at. I like longevity in businesses. SarahCare has been around 24 years. I interviewed a franchisee of SarahCare, ex-franchisee. He sold at a pretty nice multiple, and that was like 10 years ago. So it's a stable, they don't have thousands of locations, but they're opening 1 or 2. They're closing minimal locations. They're looking to really scale up now. But I like that longevity, and I like who you really have to see what managers behind the concept. So another healthcare brand, Success on the Spectrum, which they're really new. I mean, 2015, so 7 years when you compare that to SarahCare, but it's a new space helping kids with autism, generally 2 to 5 years old, and it's behind applied behavioral therapy, where this is a new science for helping kids with autism that there's no other franchises doing this. There's a few that focus helping children on the spectrum, but it's more of like a gym. It's more activities. It's not really scientific. It's not backed by science. Where Success on the Spectrum is running a center anywhere from 20 to 30 therapists, as each therapist has a student. So it's good for the EB-5, good for the E-2, and it's a business that has sizable top line revenue, where many other corporate locations are doing well over $1 million in sales at a healthy profit margin. Because a big part is many of the state governments are paying for the students' education. And that could be 5K, 6K, 7K a month. It's going to depend a lot on the state. Another one that's in the senior care space is One Heart Caregiver Services. They've had multiple E-2 visas approved. We can see different metrics here. And it's also to see any red flags, like, is the royalty on par with the franchise median? Is it on par with the industry? Is the franchise fee too high? Is it kind of on par with how the other home care businesses are? The failure rate for this one, the failure rate's high. But talking to the franchisor, they made sense. They awarded license to people that weren't working 40, 50 hours a week and were doing it in a more of a part-time capacity, and it just wasn't a good fit. So they redesigned their system, and they're more stringent on the type of franchisees they bring in. And the financials have done quite well as a result of that, and kind of cleaning house a bit with the franchisees that are currently operating. And their sales have been doing really well for their corporate location, as well as the franchisees that are largely operating in California. IPG is a business we've had 15 plus clients invest in for the E-2 visa. We've had a phenomenal relationship with this family-owned franchisor. Again, longevity. I like that they've been around a while, 21 years. They're not going anywhere. We've seen a lot of the businesses where they just started franchising a year ago. They have one corporate location. That's a pretty big red flag. We want to see at least 5 locations that are doing well if we're going to seriously consider the opportunity for our clients. So many options. Success on the Spectrum, you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and work hard. One Heart Caregiver as well, 30, 40, 50 hours a week. SarahCare could be significantly less hours because you can work directly with the franchisor, where they can really be much more involved in the day-to-day operations. For EB-5, it's tough. There's a few options like SarahCare at the 500K level, but generally you're looking to invest 600 to 700K. As labor costs have gone up, it's expensive to keep 10, 11, 12 people on payroll. So Vetted Biz, we have the data there. You're seeing my view. I'm logged in. $39 a month. There's a free trial. You can get access to all this data. We're also creating more easier contact lists, so you can see the contact information for every franchisee in every franchise system. So it's hundreds of thousands of franchisees. So as part of the due diligence, you got to talk to people that have already invested and are already running the business, and see if they like it, would they have done it again. And for our Visa franchise clients, we prepare you with those tools. Vetted Biz is more autonomous, where you're doing the reach out, you're doing the investigation. I hope you still engage a franchise attorney, but it would be on you. Where for Visa franchise, our clients engage us because they want more handholding throughout the process. They want us to work very closely with their immigration attorney, the franchise attorney, and we do a more thorough analysis, not just an initial scrape. We're talking to a lot more franchisees in that system. We go into more details on the income statement and balance sheet of the franchisors. There was one franchisor we saw that the owner had his Porsche Cayenne on the balance sheet. And it's just, you see some ridiculous things, and it's not for the majority of franchises, but there are some that are really poorly managed and if not fraudulent. And you can, if you know where you're looking, you can usually spot them. So that's what we do at Visa Franchise. And usually it's depending on visa processing time, 6 months, 9 months to get the E-2 visa from the time we start working with our clients. And we have a very tight process. And Bernie mentioned the due diligence. So we've evaluated these franchises before we present them to you, but you've got to do your own due diligence, and you're the one that's going to have to live with this decision on what franchise you invest in. And that does include having a franchise attorney really review the legal terms. And if for some reason you wanted to sell the business or move back home, what would be the process with that? A big part too, talk to some franchisees that have left the system. So we have that information and we can help arrange those calls. Why did that person sell the franchise? Why did they close the franchise? All part of the due diligence process, which can take 2 to 8 weeks to complete. And then an investment decision is made. So a few different ways to work together. You can buy a business, start a business. We really help with buying a franchise where we're more actively involved, but we have the information and data on businesses for sale, principally in the state of Florida, as they have a MLS for businesses for sale. And there's very few states that do that. Like in California, you would have to just call 20 business brokers to see what they have, and it's a harder process with less information.
Patrick, this is incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. I'm just watching the time. I tried to answer most of the questions, but unfortunately, I can't get through to all of them. If you want to email me, you can email at VisaLaw, VISALAW, VisaLaw at my last name, which is Wolf, like the animal, and S for Sam in the middle, and a DORF at the end. So VisaLaw at Wolfsdorf, or Bernard at Wolfsdorf, J Barnett at Wolfsdorf. Patrick, my friend Alan Kay is texting me how to get hold of Patrick. Patrick, what's the best way to get hold of you guys?
The best info at visafranchise.com. That would be the easiest, and one of my assistants can pass along information, and we can always schedule a call consultation.
You're becoming a big operation now, Patrick. I remember it was just you and your two brothers.
Exactly.
Now, there's a whole big
stopping by our booths. It was just us two. Now we're 34.
Wow.
34
cool.
So it's fun.
Yeah, no, you're growing. And look, I assume that's because you're doing something good. I do repeat, I don't endorse any investment. I have said it 45 times, so I'll do it 46. Due diligence. Don't want to hear 5 or 6 years down the road how you lost all your money. So do your due diligence now. Business is risk. Of course, you know, when we talk about the American dream, you may have a nice house with a white picket fence, or you may lose your money. So be careful, do your due diligence. The good news is investment immigration is absolutely one of the best and easiest ways to immigrate. And you can do your own thing. Some people like to work for others. Some people like to manage their own business. There's numerous different models. If for those of you I did not get to answer your question, you can email me, VisaLaw at Wolfsdorf, comes directly to me. I'd be happy to answer it. We will be sending out this entire recording to everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Patrick, we've got to do this again sometime. It seems really popular. So wishing you all a tremendous day and week. And there we go. For more information, you can reach Patrick at 305. That one disappeared. I was just reading it out. So anyway, you can always just Google Visa Franchise.
Yeah, you can WhatsApp us. WhatsApp works well, 305-493-2080, and then info at Visa Franchise, and we get back to you within 24 hours.
I found these guys pretty reliable, pretty straightforward. but again, do due diligence on your due diligence provider. So on that cheery note, thank you, everybody. Until next time, please excuse me for my bad jokes. That's what keeps me going. And until next time, thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Appreciate it,
Have a
Bernie.
wonderful
Enjoy.
day. Thank you again, Patrick.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, everyone.